All right, got the recording going, and we are in MICIP session number 7, I believe, is today. And so we're kind of in we're in overtime now. We'd said we were going to go for 6, and after that, those last couple we kind of agreed to keep things going until about spring break time, and then we'll just kind of reevaluate from there to see where we want to go. So today I am, hey Robin. Today I am would like to start off with a few updates from the week, and one kind of very late coming one that I'm going to just mention but not get into today because I need to do a little bit more research on it. And then I would like to make sure that we have a little bit of time to get back into the platform and go to and wrap up that root cause section and show that transition from root cause into goal setting. So that's kind of the part in the platform that I'd like to get to today. So that's kind of the agenda. Does anybody need the agenda linked, or is everybody, we all have that by now? Thank you. So I just want to go over the updates. They're in our document as usual. So the first one is a big follow-up from our last meeting. And in our last meeting, we really spent the whole thing getting into the platform, looking at user management, talking about how to get your schools established and all those sorts of things. And I think I emailed this to a few people, but one of the things that that we were really trying to do was to be able to upload our staff. And this was of particular interest to our large districts. If they had a real large amount of staff to input, a lot of some of the other districts that we have here just have a few people. And so anyway, we communicated with the data hub, and you can see there that there's not an upload option in MICIP. And so right now you have to do basically individually create accounts. And it does go very fast. However, you have to think about what the permissions are for each individual. And I think that's the part that's a little bit more time consuming. So if you're trying to think of, who all you have to put in, and you just put them all in and then you go back and do permissions later. We'll talk about permissions here in a minute, but essentially the bottom line is there's not an upload option. He did say that in the next, he said 4 to 6 weeks, they're anticipating an update that will allow with some integration with the data hub. But a lot of that is going to hinge off of one, what your status for integration with the data hub is, and then 2, where they're pulling that data from. So whatever source they're trying to attach to get to that staff level data would have to be accurate on your end as well. So I'm not sure how they're planning on doing that. I know that, for example, Power School doesn't just have, which is what we use in Muskegon County, doesn't just have a staff list area. So I'm not sure where they would go to grab a staff list to import it. We have things like courses where the teachers are assigned to courses, but that doesn't have things like social workers, counselors, principals. So I'm not really sure where they're going to get that list if they're expecting to import that from the data hub. So that'll be interesting to see how that kind of plays out in the next few weeks. But in the meantime, if you want to get people added, you have to do it by hand. What I've been talking about with a lot of the districts around here, and I think we've talked about a little bit in this forum as well, is that especially here at the beginning, we don't really need a lot of people logging into the system anyway. So it's not like there's this big rush to try to get this huge, database of people into the system with all the right permissions and all that sort of thing. So it could be something to just kind of chip away at and see if they get some better integration here in the next few weeks. The main thing is really to make sure that you can access it and that somebody in the district is set up as your MICIP administrator. So that's kind of where we are on this. Just trying to pretty much get everybody entered by hand in the meantime, and knowing that there's probably not a big rush to get a ton of people in there. You can run huge pieces of the process without people being in MICIP at all. So
David,
yes.
um, It does have an option to import users, but the only issue, it gives you all the users in the district, and then it has those arrow buttons where you can just move them to the window and they get imported. But it does not allow you to put a filter on, for example, admin or teachers. It did give me all the staff names.
Okay, so it sounds like they got farther than what they thought when I. So this is a couple weeks old. It didn't take them 4 to 6 weeks to get that button working. It looks like.
There
So
is an
which
option
is
for
good news, but you
filter.
can't filter, right? So you
Yeah,
wouldn't be able to say I want to look at all principals or I want to look at all teachers or whatever. You can't filter in that way, Fatme.
correct.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, well, I haven't seen the button at all, so you're one step ahead of me, which is not a big surprise. So there you go for the users. It sounds like if anybody else wanted to get in there and experiment with that, I think at the ISD level, I don't think that I have some of the same permissions that you do at the local level, but I'll get in and try to mess around with it as well. Um, so there was that piece. The next item on my agenda is, and Pam and Robin, sorry, you guys already saw this information, but don't worry, I'm not going to go over it word for word. I have some information in here about the interaction of MICIP, the consolidated app, and Nexus. And so I had a long conversation with a couple of people from the Office of Educational Supports. So that would be Shelley Patton, Nate Beelan, to try to get a good understanding of what's the interaction between MICIP, the consolidated app, and Nexus. And so I'll kind of go through this quickly, and then if anybody wanted to talk more about it, if there's quick questions, of course, we'll talk about them right now. If there's any kind of more conversation to get into, anybody's welcome to stick around after we're done today. But as we know, Nexus is being built right now. That's going to be replacing Megs Plus for the consolidated app. Nexus will still be used for other applications, Megs will still be used for other applications, but Nexus is what is going to be there for the consolidated app. And it sounds like all of the equitable services work that we do, the Title I school selection and the consolidated application will all be one process that is run. You don't have to, it won't be a separate spreadsheet they have to do for equitable services and then a separate application for the Title I school selection, then a separate application for the consolidated application. That's going to all be one process. If you're putting goals, strategies, and activities into MICIP this year, those will be drop downs in Nexus. So according to everything that's coming out right now, we have to have one goal in MICIP this year. So even if you're not making any new goals this year, you have to at least have one new goal in MICIP. But if you haven't, or you have to have one of your goals in MICIP. If you have any new goals, so let's say it's something that you've never had before and it's never been approved by your consultant, then that must be in MICIP. So if you have brand new goals that have never been there before, they have to be in MICIP. If you have two brand new goals, then you're going to have two goals. So they're saying the minimum is if you don't have if you don't have a lot of changes, you at least have to put one goal in MICIP to get going this year. If you have big goal level changes, those need to go in MICIP. So some detail about that is below. If you have things that have kind of always been approved, you've always worked with your consultant on this, you've always had this professional development or this coach or those sorts of things are going to kind of get fast tracked in Nexus. If you have new expenditures that haven't been approved previously, then they're going to want to know more about those processes. Are they reasonable and necessary? Are they allocable? Were they based on a needs assessment? Do you have job descriptions? All those sorts of things. They'll have less questions for you if it's a drop down that comes from Nexus because they can tie it right back to what's in MICIP. If it's just a brand new thing that showed up in there that they've never approved before in a goal that you've already had, then they're probably going to have some other questions for you. So they went on to say, if you're following along on our sheet, I'm at this section. If you choose to do the paper version of MICIP this year, then you still need to do all of the above, and you'll have to upload that paper version into Nexus. And what their main recommendation was that the program people and business officials make sure that they attend the spring workshop this year. So I think that's the 27th for over here in West Michigan, May 27th, something like that. Or maybe it's 7th. Sorry, I should have had that date on there. I knew we had people from all over the state, so I didn't put a date in there for it. But they have those spring workshops that they offer every year, and they're usually a half day. And Shelley was saying that this year it may be a full day because there's so many changes. So as you're thinking about when your spring workshop is, you should hear from your consultant about when those dates are. You can usually attend any of the dates around the whole state. They're going to be virtual again this year. And there's going to be a ton of stuff on the interaction between MICIP, consolidated app, and Nexus. And so this is just so you can kind of start wrapping your head around a little bit. That's sort of the, that's kind of what I just wanted to share that today. So it's just kind of start wrapping your head around that a little bit. We have talked about some specific data integration pieces here. And one of the pieces that people have been asking for was, is MiFi going to be integrated into MICIP so that we could just select specific reports in that and everything. And I talked to Terry Nugent about that yesterday. And she said that MiFi is coming in the second quarter. So it sounds like that will be available still this school year yet, where you'll be able to select MiFi and then you'll be able to filter it by specific MiFi reports. So it would not be helpful if you just clicked MiFi and it pulled in the whole 150 page MiFi report. You know, sort of like with our mock data set that we had, how we pulled specific reports out of it and we uploaded those. You should be able to do that in MICIP. So you'll be able to filter down to say, I want just this school. I want just this report from this school. And it'll just take that report and put it in. So that sounds pretty good. We'll see if they're able to get that out this school year yet. And then she also mentioned in that same conversation that they're also working on third-party vendor integration. So a lot of us use IDEX in this part of the state. And I know that a lot of people use Metrics in other parts of the state. And there's other third-party vendors that people use for data warehousing and that sort of thing. They are working with all of those vendors right now to be able to start to import their data the same way that right now we can for all the My School data reports. One last thing that I want to mention, and I don't even have it in this because I want to do a little more research on it first, is I'm not sure if anybody else has gotten this, but I've talked to 2 people today that received some sort of notification from their district lawyers about MICIP and data hosting and those sorts of things. If you did get one of those, I have only recently been able to hear about this and get my hands on that. And so I don't feel like I'm in the position to talk about it or give any kind of guidance or opinion on it. But hopefully I'll have some more to talk about that with next time. So my initial glance at it was that there's some concerns around the way that data sharing, user agreements, and the sorts of data that flows between different things might all interact. So I will, like I said, I'll look into that a little bit more. And if anybody else gets notifications about that or they hear anything additional about it, I'd be really interested to hear about that. Okay, so that was my update section. Do we want to pause for a minute for if anybody has any questions about any of those things, or if anybody has anything additional to add about any of those
David, with the data hub, I know this conversation came up before about the security of the information and the sharing. So how do you suggest we proceed if we do hear something like that? Because I know that we hesitated to participate in the past for that same reason.
So you can actually, I'm not sure how this would work retroactively, but I'm sure that's possible. You can opt into participating in MICIP, but opt out of all of the data sharing portion of it. And again, I would need to I'd need to look a little bit more deeply into that for how that would work. But it seems to me that that would take care of any of the data sharing concerns, because basically the only data that would be going into MICIP would be anything that you personally uploaded or you got from My School data. So it would it just unplugs that data hub connection. And MICIP runs just fine without the data hub connection.
Okay, I see. Thank you.
So that's just like my very initial thought on it. And like I said, I have a lot more research to do on it, and hopefully I'll have some more information on that next time. Anything else about any thoughts on any of that MICIP consolidated app Nexus? Anything that anybody else knows more or beyond what I said that is good for the group? All right. Well, I am going to share my screen then, and I'm going to do a quick recap of kind of where we are with our little test process, and we're going to go to the next step. Got to get the right screen shared this time. So just, I know that everybody that's tuned in today knows this, but just in case somebody's joining from the recording later, we do have our everything that we've worked on since the start is all listed right in our open forum calendar. I'll have that in the YouTube description. I'll link to this in the YouTube description. The video playlist is there. It connects to all the different pieces that are on here. So what we've been doing for the last couple months, 3 months now, is we had a mock data set that was put together. It's real data, but it's pulled from a variety of different buildings and districts here in Muskegon County. And we put together a mock data set around whole child data. And we really tried to focus on health, wellness, and that sort of thing. So we have a lot of SRSS data, MICIP data, or excuse me, MiFi data, school climate survey. We have some process data with tiered fidelity inventory. So we pulled together a data set, and we've been working through this year to run the process in MICIP, and we've been using this Google Doc to do that. So both of those are linked in our open forum calendar today, and we will need to use that group data discovery notes as we're having those conversations. So I'm looking at, gonna open up MICIP here. So I'm logged into MICIP. When you first go into MICIP, you're gonna, it will open up and it'll say My Portfolio. It's gonna have all of your active goals there. And then below that is everything that's in progress. And right now, our MAISD open forum data set is in progress. So I'm going to go ahead, and it'll also tell you where you left off. And it says that we left off at the challenge statement. So I'm going to go ahead and open that up, and it'll automatically take us right to the spot where we left off. But I'm going to do a quick kind of recap of what we've done so far. So I'm going to go back to the Discover Data. And that data set that I kind of flashed up on the screen earlier, this is what it looks like when it's uploaded into the system. So for example, you can see all the MiFi data that we put up there. The school climate surveys are all there. The SRSS data, the tiered fidelity inventory. And we also did a fishbone diagram where we did a root cause analysis, and then we actually went back, and this is kind of, it shows that that nonlinear nature. We went back after doing the root cause, and we added it back into our data set. And then you can do some further analysis after you do that. So all of our data is uploaded here. And this is where kind of we were talking about earlier, you can add the additional data. And right now there's just my school data and this district upload. Some of those concerns that were brought up earlier, and it looks like some of the legal concerns are around that third button that will be here around the data hub integration. So if you're to unplug from that, then that button wouldn't be there. And we're in the training site right now, so it's not there anyway. This was all of our initial data discovery is all in here. After that, we went on to analyze the data. And the first thing we did was we did a fishbone, and then we went back and plugged that in, and then we completed a root cause analysis of that. And so our root cause analysis is there. And basically we got to the bottom of the root cause, and what we ended up with here at the root cause was we started with why do we lack professional learning around how to support social emotional needs of our students? So all of our data is around social emotional. And so we kind of went through this process, and we ended with our final why says, because we have not educated all staff members and leaders about this connection. So they said, stop here. We need to educate all staff and help them understand why this work needs to be a priority, make the connection between SEL and academic success. So I'd really like everybody to really keep that in mind. So if most of you have been here through this whole process, so if you think about it, all the data that we looked at, all the different gap analyses that we did and root cause analysis of that sort of thing, this was kind of one of the groups that said this was the bottom line. This is our root cause. Our root cause issue here is that we really need to bring our staff up to speed on this, and we need to make a connection between social emotional learning and academic success. So that's where we are right now. So after you go through all of that data discovery and after you go through all of that root cause analysis, then you go on to this next step, which is new territory for us in our group. We get to go into defining the challenge statement. So there's two kind of steps here that the first one is to do this challenge statement. So it says, based on the results of the root cause analysis, define the challenge in one sentence. And they give an example here. And so a lot of times I'm kind of thinking it might be it's a way to kind of, what's one sentence that talks about the challenge or what you're trying to accomplish here. And so the example here, it says the district needs to, this is just the generic example that's in here. The district needs to allocate resources to develop a system to implement GELN literacy essentials at a school and maintain resources to continue implementation and progress at school A. So that's kind of their one sentence challenge statement. I think that our group that did the fishbone almost ended theirs with a challenge statement. So I'm just gonna pull up, I think are probably good to just do this together instead of getting into small groups to do this. And so what I wanted to accomplish today was to, in our group template, would be to say, based off of all this information that we have in our document so far, what would be the challenge statement that we might come up with? And then after that, we're going to define a goal, and then we're actually going to be into the goal setting section. So based off of all that, I want to kind of open it up to the group to just have a conversation around all the data that has been that we've gone over, the conversations that we've had, what we've documented so far, and just to see what might the group come up with for a challenge statement here. So I'm just going to open it up for conversation at this point.
Dave, I hesitate to make something harder than it needs to be. I believe the challenge statement flows right out of that end point. Based on the information, in the sample thread, the district needs to provide professional development in the relationship between SEL and academic success.
Mm-hmm. Pam, that's exactly where my mind was going too. The whole idea of some professional learning behind where is this and how does it fit into the bigger, broader picture of who we are.
Okay, so I heard Pam say the district needs to provide professional learning on the connection between SEL and academic success. And then I heard Frank say something, but I was typing at the time.
It was pretty much affirming what Pam said. I mean, great minds are obviously thinking alike at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, but I think that's right where my mind went, was exactly what she said.
Okay. Are there other interpretations or other wordings of that we might want to consider?
Can I ask, David, I see there in the notes, it says it just needs to be one sentence. So we're just looking for one statement that kind of shows where the focus is going to be on that challenge, correct?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
I'm wondering
I
if,
wonder if it's specific enough. It's a challenge. It's supposed to be a challenge. That is a statement. Is it how do you qualitatively describe the challenge, the level of challenge that needs to be present? I don't know. This is a little new for me.
yes. And the idea of a challenge statement is also new to me. And I think probably it will be for a lot of people. So for us to struggle with this is probably good because we can kind of think of what are other people going to be struggling with when they do this. When I look at that first one, it seems awfully, I don't know if it's almost like we want professional learning to be a strategy that helps us to get towards something, right? So it seems like to be specific to say we need professional learning, seems like that's going to come at the strategy level, or even the activity level that we need professional learning. So what would be a way to raise that up a little bit, and not be so specific about maybe an activity that we're going to complete?
Dave, I wonder if it's around the understanding, that the challenge is educating staff to help them understand why this needs to be the priority before getting to the professional learning. So how do you create the mindset within the culture that this has to be a priority?
And when you say this, do you mean student wellness, social emotional learning, like thinking about like some of that data that we've looked at? What's the this of that?
Yeah, this is the SEL skill development for students.
The connection between the SEL and academic success. I mean, I think that's what we're trying to get them to really make that connection.
And I am going to have to step off at 4. So, but
Thanks
wanted to
for being
contribute.
So yeah, I think this is starting to get kind of where we're going. So our challenge statement is maybe to educate staff. Try to make this into our challenge is to educate staff to understand, I put / create the mindset and culture that SEL skill development or the connection between SEL and academic. So I was just that was a little more brainstorming than an actual statement at this point, but maybe helps us kind of get, to me, that sounds like it's getting more toward a challenge that we could set a goal around and then dig into a lot of different strategies or activities around. I like this creating the mindset and establishing the culture. So I might say as a brainstorm to establish the mindset and district culture that SEL, or let's see, around the connection.
I like
Okay.
that.
So how's one, is there any kind of further massaging we could do to that? Or two, is somebody thinking this in a different way that would connect kind of differently to the data that we put up so far?
Sounds like from the sample, we need to mention the resources in there, in the challenge statement. And as I looked at the definition of a challenge statement, I Googled it. It sounds like we need to identify the resources within the statement. Like, look at the example. It says the district needs to allocate resources.
Right. So we're, I think that's a great thought, because later we are going to be allocating resources, right? And so it doesn't really take maybe resources to make a mindset, right? And so I think that's a good point. So how could we maybe work in that piece of, because this is eventually going to tie to our state and federal funding. And
So we can say simply the district will provide resources to establish the mindset. Like, and the resources would be either personnel or financial. It could be both.
Time as well.
Time resources, yep. So the district will provide resources, personnel, financial, or time to establish the mindset and district culture around the connections between SEL and academic success.
Right.
All right, I think I'll pop this up here for consideration for the group. So for the purposes of today, why don't we go, let's go with that one for now. And then as we get into defining the goal, and maybe even as we get to writing a goal, maybe in the next session, we might need to come back and do a little bit of revising as we get into that. So I think for right now, since none of us have worked through this process from beginning to end, we might not quite yet know what a good challenge statement looks like. So this will be a good activity to maybe come back to this and see, was this the right challenge statement?
Yeah.
So here's where I think when it comes to defining the goal, I think maybe it would be interesting to maybe get into, what do we got here? 2, 4, 6, we have 8. Okay, thanks, Pam. Pam mentioned that slide 27 of the roadmap discusses some challenge statements about writing those. Thank you. So this next part on the defining the goal, I think maybe it would be nice to get into a couple of groups and maybe just have 2 groups each come up with a goal, and we can see what kind of similarities we have, and maybe if those, what that would look like if we were to kind of come back. So just to give everybody a chance to get in on a conversation. So I'm going to go ahead and pop us into 2 groups for this one. I'm going to make 2 breakout rooms. We're all just going to automatically get popped into one. All right, here we go. We'll set this for, we'll see how we're doing at about 8 minutes. Sound good?
Dave, do you have the this particular document where we'll be able to see it in once we get into groups?
Yeah, so this is linked. This is linked in our agenda.
Oh, I see it now. Okay, thanks.
Yep. That's the one that's called Group Data Discovery Notes.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right, there we go.
Hello, friends.
Hello.
Hello.
Michelle's double duty in it right now.
It's the name of the game.
Absolutely. All right.
A goal with a measure and a due date.
So I wonder if like thinking of the all that different data that we have, it's not as easy as saying we want to see our ELA scores improve. You know what I mean? We have
Right.
MyPy data in there, we have TFI data in there.
Well, and you have to think of the kind of outcome you want when your goal or your challenge is to raise adult understanding.
So could you do something about like a goal around that, like professional development or something like that? And put that on like a timeline?
In this, well, in the strategy, is where I would put the PD.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I think the goal is, by a certain point in time, a desired number of staff member will demonstrate an increased understanding of the relationship between SEL and academic success, something that you might measure using a staff survey.
Right.
or observational protocol if you're doing rounds.
Mhm.
So I'm just trying to catch a couple of these ideas. So
Okay.
staff survey of understanding / beliefs
Mhm.
around connection of SEL and academic success, right?
Right.
Mhm.
Then I heard also that there could be an observation tool like the high quality instructional tools, or maybe there's even associated pieces in the 5D program.
Right.
For sure.
Michelle, do you guys use 5D? What do you guys use for you use 5D? Okay.
I'd be, yep.
It's been a few years since I've done it. Otherwise, before I would have been able to rattle off, oh, these would be 3 that would work. It's been a few years since I've had to evaluate anybody with it. So I can't remember what they're called. They're not dimensions at that level. The next level is
Indicators.
indicators. Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, I think of like the blueprint districts have a lot of the teacher actions and student actions that they collect into HQI data. That could be another good indicator. I wonder if some of the TFI, so the tiered fidelity inventory, we have some of that data in here. I wonder
I was thinking as well.
if an increase in your TFI score might be an indicator that you're getting there on this one. I think maybe some of the sub scores more than others, but so those are a couple of our ideas. I wonder if we could make something generic and then say insert data source above. Like,
Well, sure. You have to know what your data source evaluates. I don't know if any of us, I'm not familiar enough with them specifically to choose, but I think we're on the right path.
like
You know,
I
which
think
data sources look at cultural improvement.
right. If it were me, and this is total knee jerk, and looking at the data sources that we had, I'm just sharing this real quick. So like something, an easy data source that we wouldn't have to make, like a survey, or, like a before and after survey, or establish teacher and student actions for our high quality walkthroughs and things like that. One would be to just use your overall TFI score. There might be some sub scores that would be better to use, but you could use a percentage. So you could say to increase our TFI implementation from 65% to 80% or something like that, might be something that I would think of. I like the idea of the walkthrough data or 5D data, because you could look in the 5D and say, if these are the 3 dimensions, we want to see more of our staff proficient or distinguished in these. We want to move from 50% of our staff proficient to distinguished to 75% of the staff proficient to distinguished. That would be another good one. I think either one of those could work. All right. So we want to say something along the lines of our goal is to provide staff with the opportunity to develop mindset and culture. Is that like kind of the direction we're going here? We're trying to, or I don't know if it's provide the opportunity.
I like something that's measurable.
Yes.
And I like to measure either behaviors or knowledge. You can measure understandings. You can observe behaviors. So is our goal to improve understanding, to improve culture, to improve, sorry, I'm thinking out loud here, folks.
Yep.
Where's our spot? Thank you. That's what I needed to see. I think we're trying to improve the understanding of the connection between SEL and academic success.
And can we just use the TFI data right now, knowing that we could substitute in that is,
Yep.
and a lot of times we're trying to shoot for like an 80% on those TFI implementations to show a generalized implementation.
Yeah.
So from
Maybe you need a
65%.
timeline. So by 2022 or something.
How's that?
Yep.
Just knowing that you could definitely substitute that out for any of the other ideas or other ones. So, all right, go team. Looks like we have 14 seconds.
Thanks for typing.
All right, I think that's pretty good.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Oh, hey, fancy meeting you guys here. The greatest example of going somewhere without going somewhere ever. All right, I think the other group will be back here any second.
I think we lost our friends.
Hey, all right, we're back. So can the Frank, Ellison, Hilda Fatme group, how'd you guys do?
We had a good discussion because I think we focused in on going more broad, like that overarching umbrella that, you know, we want to improve the climate and culture of the school, because that's where the SEL piece came in, and we went back into the data. And when we came up with those, well, we will improve the climate and culture of the school as evident by a 5% increase in the school climate and culture survey by June 2021.
Were you guys, were you thinking about the student survey, the parent one, or would you kind of do some sort of aggregate of that?
We were thinking that the goal would be a little bit more specific than that. Whatever metric we used as a pre, we'll use as a post. And we want to see specifically an increase in a positive trend of students answering, for example, suicidal thoughts. We want to see less students having suicidal thoughts as a result of implementing the strategies that came along with the challenge statement and all of that. So we didn't get to that specificity because of timing,
Yeah.
but we were thinking we need to be very specific about articulating the decrease or increase, and mentioning also the metric that was used specifically in the goal. That makes it a SMART goal.
Yep. And I'm glad that you mentioned that increase or decrease piece. There are ways to do that in when you establish that goal, it'll ask, you know, are you trying to do a percent, or, you know, there's different ways to do it, and it'll ask if you're trying to increase or decrease whatever it is that you're looking for. So I'm glad that you brought that up. Pam, can you talk about a little bit that your piece about when you're writing the goal and you're trying to put something measurable, you had this like profound statement about that, you know, you're trying to be able to measure whatever it is, the behavior that you're trying to change, or I can't remember. You just had a nice statement, and I should have asked you to remember what it was.
Well, yeah, you should have, really. I don't know that it was profound. As I write goals, I like to think about ahead to how, in fact, they will be measurable. That was really my point. So it drives me to choose. It just simply makes goals measurable by planning for that fact. So we talked about how would we know if we made an improvement in something that's less observable, like culture, or something more observable that's a behavior or a set of knowledge. And so we settled on our statement. Our goal statement is improve understanding between SEL and academic success by increasing our, and then I will say our blank, because there were a lot of data choices we could have said at that point. And we settled on a TFI score improvement specifically. But the idea being measurability.
Thanks, Pam. And, some of the things we talked about were, we could do a survey that was specific, outside of maybe something we already collected, that would be specific to exactly what we were trying to measure, kind of what you guys were talking about with like a pre and post kind of situation. We also were thinking everybody that was in our group uses the 5D, and there would probably be some indicators that aligned with that, and you'd be able to maybe track how many people are getting proficient or distinguished in those indicators, and you could track that over time too. So those were a couple of the ideas that we talked about. But I mean, I think the main item that we've all worked with for a long time is when you're making a goal, it needs to be measurable and attainable, and those different pieces. So probably won't belabor this much longer. We'll go ahead and I want to pop back over to MICIP just to kind of show what this looks like. So I'm going to take our.
Dave, can I just ask one quick question?
Absolutely, yes.
So, so Fatma made a good point when we were in our group, and she said, but I just want to make sure that I understand. So, if we look at a data set at the beginning that leads us on this very long path to the end, would your suggestion be that the data that we use at the end needs to be in one of the sets that we looked at the beginning, so that we actually know whether or not we improved it?
So yeah, I'll say what I think, and anybody else is welcome to chime in too. That's where I think maybe this nonlinear nature of it could be helpful. So like in our group, one of the things that we said was maybe we need a different data source that we would actually track on our goal. Let's do an initial survey of staff to see what is their understanding or what are their beliefs about this. And so maybe we would have to do an initial survey to see what their beliefs were, and then say, that's something that we really want to get better at. And then could give that over time. So I think that's where maybe that nonlinear nature of this comes out a little bit. With this one, we had several pieces in our data set, and which I think is a strength. But at some point, you're going to want something that was at the beginning and something that's at the end that's going to be able to show improvement on those items that are on that data set. That was another reason why we kind of chose the TFI. If we are putting those whole child PBIS systems into place, hopefully that would help us to see improvement in on all of those outcomes. So yeah, I think just trying to think about grain size on that, and what's something that's maybe going to capture more than or multiple pieces of those data to put into place. I'm not sure. Anybody else have anything to add to that, or any other thoughts, or even to say that they think I'm totally off? I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I think this is where the concept of triangulation of data comes in when you first start looking at the data to analyze it and interpret what you see in front of you, because you want to validate the gap across maybe three different measures to say, yeah, I do have this gap in reading, but I do not depend only on one metric. I look, for example, on a state, local, and district assessment, and I say, yeah, this is evident across three different measures. And then when it comes time for me to set my goal and measure the improvement, then if one metric is absent for one reason or another, sometimes state assessments are canceled and we don't have this data to compare to, so I have another thing to rely on. So this is where triangulation comes in very handy, and to validate what you're looking at.
Good for now, Allison. Not that we answered all the questions in the world, but so after I just popped in our challenge statement that we created earlier, and come over to the define goal area, and this is where they leave it pretty open. Later, there's a it's not like, remember in Assist where you had to go through and there was this formula, and you had to like plug it in, and it didn't look right, and you had to go back and try it again and that sort of thing. Luckily this time it's an open-ended field. So I'm pretty happy about that. There are some places later where we're setting some shorter term objectives and things like that it talks about, what if you want to increase it by this time or you want to decrease it by this time. We'll talk about that when we get there. But for today, we'll probably just end at the defining the goal. And so I'm just gonna come back here, and I'll just grab our first one here. We'll make this one our goal. And I'm going to pop that in here in the goal summary. It does give us a spot here. And so we're going to say by June 21. And for this, they want the short name, and basically this is what just shows up on your profile. So, so that's why they want it to be short. So I just call it improve SEL outcomes. And so this is where I want to pick this up next time. I don't want to try to get into this in the next 7 minutes because this next section is I think one of the things that really shows what's different about MICIP than our previous pieces. And that's really that you can identify end targets, that those are your big 3 to 5 year type aspirations with this. And then you can identify many interim targets. And that's where I think that, like I said, I think that that's something that really defines a lot of the difference between MICIP and our previous platforms that we've used. So I think I'll stop there for our work for today. And we'll, next time we get together, we will go over any new information that's happened in the last 2 weeks. And we'll also then get into this next part. So we do have about 5 minutes or so left before this time is up for today. So just wanted to see if if there's anything that anybody want to talk about that we talked about today within or outside of the system. And then 2, if there's anything that anybody would like to make sure that we get on the agenda for our next time together. Pam.
I chose number 1. I would like to go back to what led to our discussion today. Dave, would it be possible to pull up the fishbone?
Yep.
Okay. We've spent a few weeks following this path that started at the fishbone and before. And I actually in part kind of forgot where we started, but the content isn't, relevant to our purpose right now.
Right.
But yeah, if you could just get me there, that would be really helpful.
And well, hold on a sec. Hold on, I can make this better.
It's a little small. There you go. Okay.
So sorry, this doesn't quite get the whole thing, but
yeah, it'll be okay. We selected one of these bones to follow, and we've chugged our way down the path based on one of these. I'll call them bones. Is that the right word to use?
yeah.
The head of the fish is about the school needs to better respond to student socio-emotional health concerns. We chose one bone, we followed a path, and it's resulted in a goal statement.
Yep.
We are in one concept area, socio-emotional health. We've only explored one bone and we have a goal. I'm concerned that maybe, well, first of all, I think I might be concerned that I'm not understanding perhaps how to strategically attack this. If I want to attack all those bones, I'm going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, at least 6 goals just
Right.
in the socio-emotional goal area, topic area. I think I feel like at this place right here, there needs to be a strategic prioritizing, and maybe it's there and we didn't do it, but a strategic prioritizing of the bones, right?
Yep.
Which one of those 6 pathways are going to give us the greatest benefit under that umbrella of socio-emotional concerns? So was that a step that you just chose to mention and we didn't do it? We just grabbed one, or do folks have a strategy to offer to help prioritize where to go at this point when you select bone? I'm kind of stuck there.
So I'll throw a couple of thoughts out there, and then of course I welcome anybody else to jump in as well. There's there's not a lot of like strategic planning type things built into MICIP. What they did was they gave 2 research-based tools around root cause analysis, right? The 5 whys and the fishbone, and those both came out of the NERN work, the National Implementation Research Network NERN work. And but there's a gap in the system, and it may be evident in the process guide. I would want to go into the process guide to do a little bit more reading to if they explain how to go from a document like this to where you go next. And so I would want to dig into the process guide to see if there's a little more information there. But yes, when you do these root cause analyses, a lot of times you end up with lots of roots. And so, trying to work with a group to decide on which one is the one that you think you're going to get the most bang for your buck out of. And ours ended up being that there was a lack of, we prioritized through the work of this group, which isn't, a real district group, but just the way that our group worked, we prioritize this professional learning. And we thought if we could get staff to engage in this, then that would be the thing that helped the school better respond to the student social emotional concerns. That was kind of the route that this group took, or I should even say that one of the mini groups took, because we just kind of grabbed one of the groups as we went along, just so we could kind of model that process all the way through. But I agree, and I've talked to some superintendents about this, and a concern that some of them have raised is that they're like, geez, it really seems like this could go a lot of different ways just depending on who was in the room that day. And I don't disagree with that statement at all. And so I think that's why I think all of our conversations have kind of centered around, don't be in the system to do this work. You need to be having, you need to still have good district protocols. This isn't going to run the process for you. You need to have, good district protocols to discuss data, to make decision-making, to involve the right people and that sort of thing. So those would be a couple of things that I would have to say about it. I'm not sure what anybody else would have to add. Frank, what would you add to that in the work that you're doing with districts?
One thing I would look at, again, thinking about prioritization, would be what's going to either get you the biggest bang for the buck coming off of these 6 areas, or which one might you have to do first. So in the case of lack of professional learning, we might look at that through the appreciative lens and say, based on positive intentions and so forth, we presume that our staff needs, professional learning to be able to do this work, not so much like the last one that maybe we're not engaging students in a very good manner. But to take that and say, okay, well, let's make sure that we can get to that very bottommost level and build ourselves upward from there. If it's thinking of like tier 1 with PBIS, if you install it for everybody, that no longer becomes a reason or an excuse to not be able to do it. So if you establish that baseline with everybody around professional learning, that maybe becomes a good area to go in. It doesn't mean also that you couldn't hit these other areas in future goals too. The professional learning, well, that might just be a 6-month goal, to work through that and get everybody up to speed. And then maybe you're ready to, okay, now at this point, maybe we need to look at how many, pots are on the stove. We need to look at initiative overload. Do we have that going on next? But then kind of take it from there. So that's just one thought I have, would be that prioritization.
Pam, I think that is a very valid, I don't know if a concern is a right point to bring up. And I do think that it's something to kind of work through as we're thinking about how we might put some of these processes in place with our groups. And we come from a lot of very different size and sourced organizations. So thinking about what does that look like in my district. And of course I have to think about what does that look like and Frank, what does that look like at a county level, and how do you provide professional learning around that? So big questions for sure.
Thanks.
Well, it's 4:30, well, actually 4:32. So I'm going to officially call the meeting to a close, but welcome anybody to stick around for a few minutes if anybody want to talk through anything. And I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording at this point.